Okay, so here we are on step number 10, the very last step in our 10-step process for retouching our photographs in Camera Raw. Now, step number 10 is more of a finishing effect. We retouched this photograph earlier. We applied some lens corrections to it. And during the break, I also went ahead and applied the remaining steps to it as well. So I fixed the white balance, the exposure, clarity, and vibrance. I added contrast, and I fixed the HSL. And we have this photograph. So now we want to just apply a somewhat of a finishing effect so that this photograph really looks finished and all the attention comes to the center of the photograph, and which is the subject of my photograph, which is this building, which is this house. So in order to apply vignetting, and what exactly is vignetting? Vignetting is basically when you darken up the edges a little bit so that you bring in the attention into the photograph and you do not allow the viewer of the photograph to go outside, to take his eye outside the photograph. So we're just going to darken these corners a little bit, and we have to make sure that it's only a little bit, because if it's overdone, it looks really bad. And I'm also going to show you how bad it looks. So how are we going to apply the vignetting? We are going to go to the FX panel. So this will be the panel right next to the lens corrections panel. So it's going to be the 7th panel up here. And in the FX panel, we have what is called post-crop vignetting. And post-crop vignetting, what the name suggests is that even after you crop the photograph a little bit, the vignetting is now going to appear from the new edges of the photograph and not the original edges of the photograph. So which is why we want to apply this kind of vignetting. So there is actually another tool present in this for vignetting, but we're not going to go into that because this is the one that is more effective. In order for us to apply that, I'm just going to go ahead and I want to darken the edges and not brighten it up. So I'm just going to move this slider to the left side. So as I move the slider to the left side, you can see that it's darkening up the edges a little bit. And in order for me to make sure that it is not overdone, I want to make sure that the vignette is not really even visible on first glance. So my job is only to do it only a little bit, so, and not too much. So if I, let's say this is the before, and if I just do it up to -15, in the first glance, you're not even able to tell that it's been done. But if I had taken it all the way up to here, you can see how bad this looks. This looks like, really ugly. So I do not want to overdo it. I do not want to make it very visible and prominent. In first glance, you should not even be able to notice it. So something between -15, -25 is okay. Actually, sometimes even -25 might even be a little high. So I would just bring it back to say -15, and that should be it. So the other tools that are present over here, what do these do? So the midpoint will basically decide how much closer to the center you want it to be. And so let me just enhance it a little bit for you to see what that means. So if I have the midpoint higher, this vignette is coming in much deeper into the photograph. And if I have the midpoint on the other side, this is no longer coming in too deep into the photograph. So I'm just only doing this so much just to demonstrate, but you wouldn't do it this much. Please don't do it this much. The roundness of this would determine how elliptical or how squarish this vignette would be. If the roundness is less, then this would be much more on the squarer side. But if this roundness is a lot more, this will become much more circular. So I would actually leave the roundness to 0, and because that does a pretty good job in following the shape of the photograph. Feather would mean how sharp do you want the edges of this vignette or how blurry you want the edges of this vignette. So I would actually recommend that once you do it to -15, I would actually recommend that you feather it out a little bit more than it is by default. So what that does is, even if it is a little bit on the higher side and it is a little bit noticeable, the feather makes it a little less noticeable. So I would increase the feather a little bit. So that is basically how you apply the vignette uh, a little bit higher. So it's just a little bit noticeable and not too much. It's not visible on the first glance, but at the same time it's there so that the viewer pays all the attention to the subject and does not take his eyes outside of the photograph. So that was point number 10. That was step number 10. We have completed the 10-step process. In the next video, I am going to show you a photograph and I'm going to take it from step number 0 to step number 10 all in one video. So I'll see you there, and hopefully this has been a good learning experience for you. And I'm going to show you the power of this 10-step process, and we're going to take our photographs to really dynamic images. See you in the last video of the course.